I remember Cindy playing the guitar, some of my first introduction to folk gems like Cearley and the MTA, although I never got why they couldn't just pass another nickel through the window to him.
Well, did he ever return? No, he never returned, and his fate is still unlearned. He may ride forever 'neath the streets of Boston. He's the man who never...
We were in Oklahoma on the work trip, and she jumped off a bridge into a river below. Now, of course, all of us were doing that. When a police officer pulled up and asked who was in charge, and of course the person in charge, or at least the person that we gave credit for being in charge, had just jumped off the bridge herself, and that was.
I loved watching her cry at baptisms.
Hi Cindy, this is Alex Parkhurst. Congratulations on your retirement. You played an important part in my growing up, as the work trips I went on with you were some of the best times I had, particularly when you helped Pete and myself pick up that goat as a present for the girls.
We were mob advisors when our son was born, and we thought it would be a really good idea to teach all those kids how to change a baby's diaper with a real baby. So one Sunday night, that's what mob was all about, how to care for a baby.
And so as we've gotten older, and we have found life to be challenging and wonderful, beautiful and hard, we the mob girls find ourselves drawn back together to be a real presence in each other's lives. Because Cindy, we learned how to do that from you.
When we were on work trips on long open stretches of highway with the bus, Cindy and I tried to switch drivers every 2 hours or so. It was not worth getting off the highway to change drivers because the kids would all want to get out, and herding cats for 30 minutes was not on our agenda. They got their chance frequently enough stopping for gas with that big old gas-guzzling bus. So, only going 45 or 50 miles per hour in the right lane, Cindy would semi-stand with her foot still on the gas pedal, and I would quickly slide under her and take over the wheel. Half the time, the kids didn't even notice that the drivers had changed.
You were officiating my wedding. We were about ready to say our vows, I think, and our youngest son, Josh, who was about 2 years old at the time, since everybody was in the wedding party, he was kind of left to fend for himself a little bit. He ended up climbing all over the pews and all over the chancel and up and down the stairs. And partway through, right before we're giving our vows, he comes up and he tugs on Missy's dress and he yells out really loud, "Mommy, I gotta go potty!" Well, and you very calmly stopped the ceremony and you said, let's help this young man get to the restroom.
When I was going into 7th grade, she took us on a bus trip to the Great Sand Dunes, and climbing one of the hills, the church bus managed to get 5 miles per hour. And so she opened the door and said, "Anybody who wants to run alongside, go ahead and run alongside."
I remember going on work trips with Cindy and finally asking my last year why I was always selected to clean the bus on the last day when we returned to Denver. That was always the hardest day to clean, and of course I didn't want to do it that day. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I still remember the impact of her words. She was specifically choosing me and others because we were responsible and thorough, and she knew the bus would be left in a good condition. The idea of being seen and valued and appreciated for qualities I didn't fully realize that I had was very moving to me, and I still remember that feeling.
I can't really share the story I'd love to tell, because what happens in sex ed class stays in sex ed class.
In fall 1983, I think it was, Cindy introduced a new game. You all stand around a tarp and one by one stuff a marshmallow in your mouth. No swallowing, and say clearly, "Chubby Bunny." If it is not intelligible by consensus of the group, you are out. This proceeds around the circle, one marshmallow at a time, until there is just one person left able to say something that sounds a bit like "Chubby Bunny." They are spit out and counted to make sure there was no swallowing. Before the game, Cindy, of course, demonstrated with a number of marshmallows. I think after the game she said she had once done 23 marshmallows.
Like so many of the other memories that people are sharing today, I suppose many of mine involve the big old bus that we used to drive around. being outside the bus, either guiding it forward, making sure the wheels were still on the road, behind it, making sure as we backed up that we weren't going to run over anything of, any significance or anybody, making sure that the spark plug wires and all those other things were still attached. Before Alex's wedding, sitting in the minister's study back in the sanctuary, sitting around talking with you, Alex, and the other groomsmen, and finding out that it was okay for us to have a beer before the ceremony. Somehow I never envisioned that would be okay.
And I remember on that bus also sitting in a seat with her and having pretty serious talks about struggles, teenage struggles I was having, or real life struggles that were important to me at the time, and her giving me amazing advice and empathy to help me get through that tough period of time. She's a core person of who made me who I am today and my outlook. And so, Cindy, good luck on this next adventure. I love you and thank you for helping make me the person I am today.
Our work trip to Juarez, Mexico in the summer of 1986. We left Juarez on the Bubblegum and Baling Wire Express, better known as the Montview Bus, and to attend a cookout with some fine Presbyterians in El Paso. On our return, we hit the border fairly late in the evening, and the Mexican sentries would not allow us to pass. They were hoping for greased palms. What they received instead was a music and mask-worthy performance from the Reverend Sister Cindy, complete with tears, charades hand signals, and the goofiest riff of Spanglish one could imagine. Something like, "But mi little niños están muy tired and need muchos sueños. Por favor, por favor." Thus charmed, or simply flummoxed, the gendarmes opened the gates for us. It's the gospel truth.
On my very first work trip with Mob to Mexico, the crazy trip down on that old bus, somehow making it down and making it back was quite a miracle. But specifically, I remember being in Mexico and being up on the roof, doing some tarring of the roof with a couple other mobsters. And I don't remember whose idea it was, but we decided to cover each other in tar. We thought that would be really funny.
One memorable winter Friday night, on our way to Highlands Camp, Cindy was driving. We were climbing the last 7 or 8 miles up the canyon from Allen's Park on that very windy, steep 7 or 8% grade road. Suddenly the headlights, all lights went out. Cindy slowed and tried turning them off and on. Nothing. We couldn't stop in the middle of the road, and there was no real shoulder. So Jeff brought me a flashlight. I opened the door, went down the stairs, and hung out the side of the bus. Cindy would say, "Marilyn, shine the light on the white line so I can see the edge of the road." Well, this worked great at 20 miles an hour. Sort of. The kids thought this was so cool that they all jumped forward to watch. Cindy and Jeff were yelling, "Sit down, be quiet, Cindy needs to hear." They thought this was still so cool in the dark, on the bus, until suddenly it started snowing. Really hard. Now everything looked like a white line. Boy, did the bus get quiet after that. All you would hear was me yelling, "To the left! No, not that far left! Curve to the right coming!" Well, we arrived safely with some very grateful kids and a lot of help from the Holy Spirit.
Everywhere from Mexico to Pennsylvania. There were ups and downs on those trips. One particular interesting point involving a gallon of milk, but we won't get into that story. She was always there for me pretty much any time I needed her. Even her being a part of my spiritual life has been a very important thing to me. And she's been there for so many extraordinary moments and a career that is just absolutely outstanding for its personal effect on hundreds of people, but especially upon me. So
we were camping, and Cindy asked me to figure out putting the tents up and who's sleeping where, and I was, trying to offer direction. to, get everyone organized. And, I think I basically failed. And people were all complaining, and people wanted to sleep in different places and put tents up in different places, and, silly kind of teenage sort of stuff. And I remember becoming enormously exasperated and going to Cindy and throwing up my hands and saying, this is just ridiculous. Like, this should not be so hard. And I remember she looked at me and she said, well, this is what leadership's about.
In youth group, we always had a lot of fun and at least a modicum of religion. But the most important thing that youth group taught was how to express ourselves. I remember when Cindy would get upset or irritated, she would say, "Weenus!" Like if we had just driven through a red light and she noticed a police officer behind us, she'd say, "Oh, weenus, weenus, weenus!" And if somebody dropped an egg on the kitchen floor, "Weenus!" Even though I only was 14 or 15, I knew that each time she said weenus, really, she was talking about a we-ness. Not I-ness or you-ness, but we-ness. Togetherness. Community. That's what I heard each time she said weenus. For a young person, really just discovering her wings, that message of leadership was profound. We-ness.